bedre for oss hvis det ikke så sterkt, men ja, du må gjerne spørre om det.
Det skulle ikke bruke stemme, så jeg kan jo bare kjøre.
Ja, det kan du kjøre.
Ja.
Jeg tror jeg ønsker velkommen igjen, det jo bare å begynne.
Ja.
Veldig sterk lys. Very strong light. Denne på? Hallo? Hallo? Ja, der var den på. Hjertelig velkommen til dette debattmøtet med titel Ytrings- og religionsfriheten i Europa står i fare. Hvorfor? Det et spennende tema for alle, håper jeg, men vi i Human-Etisk Forbund veldig opptatt av hvordan situasjonen for humanister og ikke-troende rundt omkring i verden. Og vi har også flere samarbeidsprosjekter med humanistiske organisasjoner i andre land. Og vi også derfor veldig glad for at vi i dag kan ønske velkommen våre samarbeidspartnere fra Romania og Polen. Nå bare tar jeg denne korte introduksjonen på norsk, men ellers så vil møtet foregå på engelsk. Bare veldig kort da om debattdeltagerne. Det Csilla Czimbalmos, som rådgiver på Øst-Europa fra Helsingforskomiteen. Så har vi Adrian Kalugaru, som president i Romanian Humanist Association. Og vi har Monica, disse etternavnene altså. Toyu. Yes. Som Executive Director of the Romanian Secular Humanist Association. Så vi har altså 2 samarbeidspartnere i Romania, som vi har hatt i 4 år allerede, og så har vi fått en ny samarbeidspartner fra Polen, og det Kaja Bryks, som president i Polish Rationalist Association og visepresident i European Humanist Federation. Det jo flere internasjonale organisasjoner som samarbeider. Og så vi ikke minst glad for å ha fått Ingrid Brekke, utenriksjournalist og aktuell med denne boken, Polen, aske og diamanter. Den har faktisk nettopp kommet ut. Den skal lanseres i morgen på Fritt Ord klokken 18, så der dere også hjertelig velkommen. Og jeg vil også bare si at den det mulig å få kjøpt. Vi skal ha en pause sånn cirka klokken 7, eller etterpå når vi ferdig klokken 8. Og da kan du sikkert signere. Ok, men da håper jeg det blir et interessant debattmøte og overlate ordet til deg, Ingrid.
Ja, tusen takk for det. I mange år så var jo disse landene bak jernteppet en slags sånn grå masse for oss nordmenn. Maybe I should just do this in English so you all know what I'm saying. For many years, the countries behind the Iron Curtain, when you looked at them with the Norwegian eyes, you only saw like a gray mass. An area, a communist world where freedom of speech did not exist and religion was not wanted. After 89, everything changed. And also from Norway, it was easier to see that these countries were actually very different, with different history, different languages, different culture. And in the debate today, we'll try to look both at these differences and at the similarities. We'll also look at the similarities. For instance, Poland, Romania, and Hungary are all today struggling with basic democratic principles. The panel will discuss this for 3/4 of an hour. After that, there will be a short break, and then we'll take questions from you in the audience. So we'll just start with very short presentation of yourself, where you're from, and what is the most important for you in the work you're doing. And I think it's, if you start with Kaja from Poland.
Thank you very much. So my name is Csilla Czimbalmos. It's a pleasure to be here. It's my first time in Norway. And so far I'm enjoying it a lot. I hope to stay a bit longer and do some sightseeing. I'm, as it was already mentioned, president of the Polish Rationalist Association, which is the biggest association in Poland that deals with secularism and also has humanist values in its bylaws. By the biggest, I mean we barely reach 100 members. I'm also currently vice president of European Humanist Federation. I'm very happy that my association became member of the federation. So we actually learned about the situation in other European countries, and that was quite a big inspiration for us for our work in Poland. And I'm a humanist celebrant, one of the very few that we have in Poland. So maybe that's enough about me.
Adrian?
Hello, I'm Adrian. I'm a president of Humanist Association in Romania. I joined the humanist movement 7 years ago. I became the president last year, and what made me a humanist, I think, is the need for a strong education in humanist values in Romania, which I seen it's needed especially at the youth level, which I work with very much. I became experienced in youth level working in projects since 5 years ago, and I want to bring my experience and my knowledge in this field for the humanist field as well. And also, of course, all the values that are the humanist values. I embrace them all, and I want to make them known as much as possible in Romania. Thank you.
Hi, hello, welcome. I'm glad you are here. I hope I'm not going to embarrass myself very much. My name is Monica. I work for ASUR, which is the Romanian Secular Humanist Association. We started our activities 9 years ago, almost 10. In March, we're going to have our 10-year anniversary. We are focused mainly on scientific education. We have many projects in this area, including the first Bucharest Science Festival, which is going to be next week. And my favorite project to do in the organization is the scientific calendar, a calendar that we edit every year and distribute it for free in schools around the country with informations about scientists from around the world and the latest scientific discovery that change our lives for the better. Thank you.
Hi, sorry. My name is Csilla. I'm the odd one out, so to say. I represent the Norwegian Helsinki Committee, so I'm a human rights activist. I'm originally from Romania, but belong to the Hungarian minority in Romania and living in Norway since 2003. I've been working for the Norwegian Helsinki Committee for 11 years. In the past 5 years, I've had the portfolio on the EEA and Norway grants. We are a contact point in supporting organizations in Norway, partner up with organizations in the 15 beneficiary countries in Europe. And since I have this background, both half Hungarian, half Romanian, I've been following the situation in Eastern Europe very, very closely through the work that I do.
Good. Then we'll start on the first subject, and that is maybe the theme that really is that everyone gets touched by somehow during their life, because that's the religion and school. How is the religious education, or rather, is it possible to not have a religious education in the schools in your countries? That would be the first. And Adrian and Monica, if I remember correctly, you told me that both of you, when you started school, there were no religious education, and then
Yes.
shortly after, everything changed. Maybe you can tell what happened.
I started school in 1990, right after the revolution in Romania, in all the Eastern Europe revolutions. And for the first, I believe, 2 years, we didn't have religions in schools, but after that, they become almost mandatory for the first grade until the 12th grade after you finish high school. It was like this until a few years ago, 2014, when the law changed after a long process initiated by a teacher in a small city in Romania. And now, instead of being automatically opted in for religion, you have to put a form or request in order to attend religious classes. But until now, you were obligated to opt out, because by default you're enlisted in religious classes for the whole period of your high school until university. So for the first grade to 12th grade, you had 1 hour of religious education every year of your life. And now in the last years, we also have mandatory preparatory preparatory class. So from 6 years old, you have 1 class of religious education. And since most Romanians are Orthodox, the main religion taught in class is Orthodox religion, Orthodox Christian.
So you can choose not to have, or rather you're supposed to choose to have the religious education, and if you don't have it, what happens? Then you have no education, or you have something else, or what happens?
Usually, you should. The idea is that religion is optional. From the beginning, it was optional, and what Monica said is that now that the law has changed, and now you really have to opt in for, because it's the same for all the optionals that are taught in Romanian schools. The idea is that usually you have to, when you put an optional class, you need to offer the children an alternative. If they don't choose religion, they should do something else. But most of the classes, most of the schools are not having. They say that they don't have enough teachers for having or space. Yes, and to put it short, if you opt out if you don't opt in for the religion class, basically you end up wandering in the school alone. You don't have where to go, and sometimes the children need to attend, even though they're not given marks from the teacher, from the religion teacher. They have to attend the class because they're not allowed to be not under surveillance by a teacher, and this is why the number of children who are attending religion classes is still very high, even though most of them they don't want to attend these classes, or their parents don't want them to attend the classes, but they don't have alternatives.
And what's the situation in Poland?
Well, it's quite similar. The Catholic religion classes were introduced in Poland in 1992. They are not mandatory by law, and they were not mandatory at that time, but they were considered compulsory because there was this social pressure that since communism was over, nobody wanted to be associated with the communism anymore. So the early 90s is the time when everybody goes to church every Sunday and sends all the children to religion classes. So actually, even before it was introduced to schools, my parents sent me to the classes at the parish to attend those. And everybody was there, and actually everybody was spying also on other people. Is he sending his children? Is she sending her children? You know, so there was like extreme social pressure for everybody to show that they are Catholics. And I think people started questioning this at the end of the 90s. So then these concerns were raised that, okay, we have the Concordate with the Vatican, which states that actually there have to be Catholic religion classes at public schools, but why do they have to be compulsory? Yes, let's organize something for the children who don't want to go there. And there were a lot of problems with that. So first of all, it turned out that, well, you are automatically subscribed for these classes, so you have to apply not to go there if you don't want to, so this was already a form of discrimination. Then there was no idea what to do with these children. At some point, there was a suggestion that there can be classes of ethics, and this is what was introduced, but it was introduced with a rule that you need to have minimum 7 children that would opt out of the religion classes to organize ethics classes for them. And in most cases, people were not reaching this number. So later on, after a lot of campaigns, protests, there were rules that, okay, they can organize ethics classes for children from different schools to have that together. But usually the practice was that the religion class was in the middle of the day between other subjects. So these kids that were not going to religion had to stay in the corridor, basically, or nobody was taking care of them. And then the ethics class was organized in between the schools, somewhere in the evening, far away, so nobody would really go there. So it kept changing. So actually now the situation is much better, especially after the decision of the European Court of the Human Rights, which in 2014 decided that there was a huge discrimination based on that situation. And they forced our Ministry of Education to change the rules. So now, actually, at the beginning of the school year, you have to subscribe for the religion class or the ethics class, or for none of them, so none of them is mandatory. You can decide not to go to any of them, or you can decide to go to both. And even for one child, there will be a class of ethics organized. So this is much better. The only problem is that currently most of the ethics teachers are the religion teachers too. So this is another problem which we still have to solve.
And in Hungary, it's quite different, I understand.
Yeah, there are some similarities, also based on this tradition coming from a communist, post-communist country. But what is interesting in Hungary is that the government has decided to establish and help parish schools. So it's not just an issue of how much religion is being taught in classes, which is a bit similar to what Poland has now, where you can opt between religion or ethics. But again, experts say that it's about the same curricula anyway. So whether you opt to one or the other, you get the same thing. But in Hungary, they have these parish schools or church schools, which in many cases and in many small places are the only existing schools. And what is interesting with these church schools, parish schools, is that in many cases they receive double the amount of funding than the public schools. in many places, it's the only school available, and in some of the major cities, for high school level, it's the only choice again. And as parents, if you want to send your child to a school and you have a public school and a parish school, in these situations, the parish school is always better off. They have good facilities, they have renovated buildings, and the public school doesn't. So they choose to enroll the child into the parish school, even if the parents are not religious, even if they have no affiliation to the parish that has the school, but because the facilities are so much better.
And when we spoke earlier about Romania, you made a very interesting point that there is a connection between the religious education and the freedom of speech in general in society. Yes. Could you explain how you think about this?
Yes. You are taught in a religion class for 12 years, now 13 years, that you should not challenge authority, you should not question authority. So it's really hard to, as you grow up, to become aware that you too have a voice and you are able to have an opinion and to speak out your opinion. So Adrian has had this experience with some teenagers that I think you should say this.
Yes, I organized facilitated a project with high school children 2 years ago. It was about media literacy, and that after one of the first sessions, me and the other facilitator asked them, they were like 25, 30 young 17, 18 years old, and we asked them how did they felt about the activity, what is their opinion, if they liked it, what they didn't like, and for several seconds, almost half a minute, there was a total silence, and some of them started to say that nobody asked that in 10, 11 years of school. They don't know what to say, and they cannot. They were starting to express themselves very, very hard, and we helped them. And also we did that in the several days that followed the same exercise. They became more and more open on giving us feedback, because it's important in educational projects to receive feedback. And when they came back to school, it was like for them it was a shock to return in their environment, because they knew that they cannot question the authority of the teachers.
Yes.
Also, there are cases, we have to speak about that, in which not all the teachers in Romania are authoritarian, or they impose this kind of feeling, but you also have the reverse, in which children are not respecting at all the teachers, because basically they want to revenge on the feelings, they have the feelings about the ones that are authoritarian in their classes. So
we have two extremes. Exactly. That we have to deal with. It's I believe to some point it's an institutional problem, but we are working with our projects, and other NGOs are doing their best to have this non-formal education project to help with these problems. But it's really hard, because I'm not sure if I can stress this enough. If you have to fight with religious indoctrination, because this is it. It's not history of religion. It's not, you don't learn about other religions and other ways of doing things. You learn only doctrine, your Orthodox doctrine, or in some cases, very few schools around the country teach Catholic doctrine, but you have 30 years of religious indoctrination, and after that, some people come and say that, oh, you could do things other way. It's really hard to reach some people.
And you are taught that the people from different religions than the Orthodox one are the bad ones.
Yes.
And if you're atheist, it's the worst thing.
Yes, well, we have quite a similar situation in Poland. I think the presence of the Catholic religion classes at schools now, well, as I explained, it's a bit better because you don't have to go there. But still, especially in smaller towns, parents would still send their children to those classes, even if they don't believe in this religion, just for the social appearances. The content of those lessons is very concerning because the Ministry of Education has no power over what's being taught in the schools, in these classes. The program is prepared by the Catholic Church and is only sent to the Ministry for Information. And and the program, well, includes Catholic values like, for example, fighting abortion, fighting LGBT rights, because this is, in their opinion, the most important thing to discuss with children. So actually, there were these scandals when you would have a 6-7-year-old child coming back home and asking, "Mom, did you have an abortion?" You know, because the priest said this is bad and you will go to hell. So, so this is one problem, and sometimes there is quite a lot of hate speech in those classes, and really children are exposed to the certain worldview, which can be very damaging, especially if they feel that there is this pressure that everybody believes in this. Yes, because everybody from their class is going there. It's not like half of the children is going somewhere else. So they feel obliged to somehow accept it and adopt this way of thinking, especially that in other lessons, I don't think that the educational system is good. Actually, anytime we are having debates in our association, whichever the topic, it always ends up with, we should change our education system. Because it is very, very similarly, it's very authoritarian. So somehow the teachers, they used to convey the communist propaganda in the past, and later on they started conveying the Catholic propaganda. And because I'm not talking only about the religion classes, but also the Polish language and literature and the history classes. These are the ones which are also subject to a lot of propaganda. I remember from my school times, I also started school in 1990. So in a way, I was lucky because the old program was not there anymore, and the new one was not really ready yet. So I think there was not that much propaganda in what I was told, but checking what the younger generations were taught, our history is presented in a very nationalistic way. So if you look at this, you are not surprised later that you have all these young people who are now followers of nationalist movements, because this is how they were, taught at schools. And actually, currently, this government that we have right now has started rewriting the history books one more time. So, for example, to change the history of the Solidarity movement. And they removed Lech Wałęsa, the Nobel Prize winner, from the history books completely.
They did from this year, or?
Yeah. So this is the kind of, well, we are going to have elections soon, but I'm not really sure if this is going to change much for the better. So it's not only the religion, it's other subjects too, and the fact that we are not teaching young people to think for themselves, to be critical, skeptic, to ask questions, to challenge the teacher, to challenge all the authorities. Especially that John Paul II, the Polish Pope, is still the most important person in the country, and if you want to be smart, you need to quote him. So
I would like to make a short comment in regards to the teacher part of your response. In Romania, there are some teacher that go to theological university, and after that they realize that they cannot all be priests or religion teachers, so they have double specializations. So they become geography teacher, a biology teacher, and they teach in schools, but they choose to present the religious version of the creation of the world, of the human being, and so on. So this is another problem. But if I look back from when we started in 2010 and until now, it's not all bad. So yes, there are many bad things, but things are starting to look better now. There have been improvements, and for us, even if there are small steps, we start to see that what we are doing works and what the other NGOs are doing works, and it gives us hope and power to keep fighting, to keep doing things better and better.
Also, one difference between Romania and Poland is that in Romania there is no law against blasphemy,
No.
but in Poland it is. And can you say something about how this is used?
Yes, well, it's not the proper blasphemy law. In precisely speaking, it is a law that you cannot offend other people's religious feelings, which makes it, I mean, it doesn't even sound like a law, to be honest, in this context, because it's so ambiguous that well, there is, the sentence is a bit longer, so the examples which are given suggest that this is about, like, for example, tearing a Bible would be an example of offending somebody's religious feelings, or if you're destroying the church building, then would. But the thing is that we have other laws for that. You're destroying someone's property, so. So this is still punishable by law, right? And this particular article from the Penal Code, it's always been used towards people who said something offensive towards the church. So it was not really, in my opinion, as per the law. But the law is so ambiguous that you can do anything with that. So it's there are apparently a lot of people filing complaints, but luckily the prosecution doesn't accept 95% of them at all, because they decide that these are just some, crazy people. But there have been court cases of artists mainly, who were doing some paintings that included the Jesus posture with some other elements, which were this was considered offensive.
Maybe this Virgin Mary with the rainbow halo?
Yes, this is another story, but right now, I mean, the court case is due. So, but there have been other cases. Luckily, not too many. And well, the punishment, you could be in jail for up to 2 years for this, or you have to pay a fine. It's not that commonly used, but still it's frightening in a way, because the most famous case was of a singer who just said in an interview in the public television that when she was asked if she believes in God, the journalists have to ask these kind of questions. So she said that not really, because she likes the dinosaurs better, but she added to that she doesn't like those stories that were written by people who are drinking all the time and smoking something. And this was prosecuted. Actually, she was to pay a fine, quite a big fine, for that, for offending religious feelings of people who watched the show. So, so this is an issue. This is a potential issue. Right now, it's not a big threat, and it's only affecting like really famous and rich people. But who knows what it could turn into in the future.
And Csilla, maybe you can say something about how is the more general situation for freedom of speech in this part of Europe, in the post-communist countries?
Yeah, well, to start with Hungary, that is the most extreme case, of course. Freedom of speech is very, very much hindered there, and actually in all spheres of life, not just connected to freedom of religion. Just recently, there was a young student from, I think it was a high school, he was almost expelled, or there was a lot of pressure for that to happen, because he had liked a comment of an opposition politician in one of the smaller places in Hungary. There are, among artists, among journalists, among trade union representatives, among actually in all fields of life, people feel the pressure and the fear of repercussions for their jobs, for their works, and for their families. So in that way, Hungary is really, really extreme. We also have severe control of the press, so freedom of expression connected to freedom of media, where the government controls mostly more than 80% of all media in Hungary and pushes its propaganda. And looking at other post-communist countries, and here I'm only talking about the ones that are within Europe and not going further to Russia and Georgia and the post-Soviet countries. We do see elements that can be worrying, but freedom of expression as a whole, as in the general, is not that threatened as some other freedoms can be. So I'm more worried about the authoritarian tendencies that come up in some countries, because if they grow stronger and if they go after the blueprint made by Viktor Orbán, as we see in Poland, then freedom of expression can be more and more threatened.
Maybe we could talk a little bit about this, the connections between the church and these new authoritarian governments. Yeah. I don't know really what you would call the government of Romania, if it is an authoritarian government or not, but it's worrying. They are also doing things that are really worrying. But can you tell us something about the connections between the church and the government?
Yeah, it's like two faces of the same. Probably most of you are familiar with the history of Eastern Europe and the revolution in 1999. But before 1999, Romanians were atheists by decree, because the party told them this is the way to live. But the Orthodox Church was not as persecuted as they claim now, because some of them collaborated with the government during that period, and in order to gain favor, they sent some of their colleagues to prison, and they told the party, so you should send this person to prison because they talk against the regime. So some of the Orthodox priests were persecuted during that period, but there are also the Catholic priests that suffered the most from the regime. But once the first layer of the Communist Party fell after the revolution, the second and the third layer of the Communist Party gained strength, and they rebranded themselves, and now they are the Social Democrat Party, and some of them joined the National Liberal Party, but they are still the same people that lead those parties, and the connection with the church still lingers, and it's still very strong, because the politicians give money to the church in order to bring more and more churches and to have more and more power, and in return, every time there's an election, the priests tell the people, you should vote for this person and this person. And since most Romanians still live in a rural area where the priest has a big influence, you can see the power that they have when it comes comes to swifting the vote to one party or another.
Yeah, what can I add is that during the electoral campaigns, the priests and the politicians are going hand in hand. The priests are often, and there are documented news about priests which are preaching about some certain politician that should be endorsed in electoral campaign. I was working for a former humanist president of the association who was a deputy in the parliament during the time when the law that we spoke about that changed the opt-in, opt-out characteristic in the religion class. The deputies in the parliament should they met in order to change this situation, and they consulted. They invited the civil society to discussions. But out of I was there at the meeting, and out of 50 persons, 45 of them were priests or representative of the Orthodox and all the other cults in Romania. And there were only four or five representatives of NGOs which were supporting the rights of children to opt out from the religion classes, and the politicians were very. They were almost listening to what the priests were saying. They were not leading the discussion at that point, and this is what they are doing in the small communities. They need to be endorsed, and sometimes it doesn't matter what they do for 4 or 5 years in their service. It matters which is the connection between them and the priests. But there is also one, let's say, positive example. Last year also we had a referendum which was called by the government, by the party which is now in power, about defining the family as the union between a man and a woman that should be put in constitution, because now we have this characteristic in constitution in which it doesn't say that
it says between spouses.
So it could be speculated. They were afraid that it's going to be speculated because in public, in Romania, we are speaking about civil partnership, about LGBT rights more and more, and they were afraid that we could, the civil society could speculate this thing, and they wanted to change the constitution. They called for a referendum. In order to be approved, 30% of the population with the right to vote had to be present. And I can say that I was afraid that, and a lot of civil society was afraid that people will pour into the elections. The government organized the referendum for 2 days, which is an exception because usually it's only 1 day, and they did it in weekend, Saturday and Sunday during the service. When the church people are going to church, but only 22% of the population went to vote. There was a huge disappointment. The church basically disappeared from the public space for 1 month or more. There were like some redemption declarations from them about okay, we have to learn from the society. They wanted to come up with a new face, a modern face, but nobody believes them because they have the same character. And now, slowly but surely, they start to gain again the voice, because also we're going to have elections this year. We're going to choose the president, and next year we're going to have 2 rounds of, we're going to choose the mayors and also the parliamentarians. So we already had European elections, and basically in 1 year, we're going to be drained of 4 election times. So it's going to be a very, very big challenge for the society, because we need to engage the people to come to vote. It's very important, because the actual structure of the parliament and the fact that we have this government which led us to many, many problems in European Union and in relationship with the own people in Romania and also with people in Brussels, is because very, very few people came to vote in 2016, sorry.
I have one small comment because we keep talking about bad things, but I want to share with you some happy memory. In regards to the referendum, my husband, who is a humanist celebrant, we also do humanist ceremonies in Romania. He's also here in the audience with me. Okay. On the first day of the referendum, he did a ceremony for two lovely ladies who are legally married in other country in the European Union, because in Romania we don't have. Sorry, in Denmark. In Romania, we don't have the right. The people of we don't have same-sex marriage legalized. So he did a ceremony for them, and it was very emotional. And the next day, we talked to them after the referendum results, and everybody was really happy because the referendum did not pass, and there's still chance for to recognize to recognize the same-sex marriage in our country. So this is another win.
Well, in Poland, we also do officiate actually wedding ceremonies for homosexual couples, but the same-sex marriage officially will only be possible if we change the constitution, because actually our constitution does say that marriage is between man and woman. So for now, there is no other way. But we do make sure to provide the humanist ceremonies, at least as a symbolic way of celebrating their love, which I think is really, really important. Well, there have been a lot of things discussed in these last moments. Well, the connection between church, the Catholic Church, and the government of Poland. Well, not even this government. Actually, to be honest, I think that the situation now is better than it was in the 90s. And that's even taking into consideration that the current government is very Catholic. Because in the 90s, really, every single government was giving some privileges to the Catholic Church, like more and more. So after the next elections, there was a new government. Okay, now your party has to show that has no ties with communism, so let's give some more privileges to the church. And actually, what we are dealing with now is the effect of all of those decisions taken in the 90s. But the power of the church has diminished because especially, well, first of all, since the internet became popular and after we joined the European Union, a lot of new ideas appeared, and especially young people actually learned that there are other ways to live their lives. And I have seen Poland changing a lot for the last decade. The changes have been enormous. And I'm lucky to live in probably the most progressive city in Poland, so I can really enjoy that. But Wrocław, yes, Wrocław, former Breslau. It's probably the most progressive because it's been a multicultural city from the beginning. By the beginning, well, in a way, from the beginning of the city too. But right now, I was referring to 1946, when actually Polish people were migrating there. So we had actually, this is a city of migrants for us. So people who came from Warsaw, which was completely destroyed after the Second World War, people who came from Ukraine and Lithuania, from the territories that used to be in Poland before the war, they were migrating, and many of them moved to Wrocław and the surrounding area. And somehow from the beginning, we had to establish rules, you know, to cooperate in yes, most people were Polish, but coming from very different backgrounds. And getting back to the church issue, I really see that there are less religious people. I really see that amongst those who are Catholics, there are many progressive people who do accept the fact that not everything has to be done according to the Bible read literally, but actually you can be Catholic and you can accept more progressive values. And right now, I think since we have finally started discussing openly the issue with pedophilia, I think this is going to be a big changer of the situation. But of course, there are people who are religious, and somehow the politicians seem to be the most religious group in our country. So let's see how this goes in the future.
Adrian, you told me that when you meet people in Romania and you just talk to them, they will immediately know that you are not a religious person because of the way you say hello and goodbye. And can you explain how this works?
Yes, especially in small communities, or when it comes to people that are coming from countryside to cities. If there are religious people, they don't say hello or goodbye, they say God bless you. So at the end of the beginning of the conversation, if you say hello to someone and he will answer God bless you, then either you are forced to say this, to speak the same way, or you just you cannot pretend you didn't hear that. So it is also this God help you or God bless you in order to endorse someone or to encourage someone to do something. Like it's this way of speaking. But if you repeat this conversation with the person and you ignore that, you feel a distance of that person, because or if you say that, okay, I'm not saying God bless you, or I will not tell you that, because if you say because I'm not a believer or something, I'm not going to church, it's like, okay, you have to you have to avoid you because it's not okay. In Bucharest, where we are living, it's not too much, but
you can see religious people while they're passing a church, they make the sign of the cross, and but only the ones that are very religious and or maybe superstitions, because it's bad luck if you don't do it. But younger people are doing this less and less, and the people living in the big cities, they're not.
Yeah, and for example, my grandmother is living 60 kilometers away from Bucharest, and I cannot visit her and stay for more than 1 day in the fasting period, because the priest is making the round on the community, and it comes with it's so-called the baptism. But it's a baptism every time. It's in the Easter, before the Christmas, and like 6 or 7 times per year. It's the so-called baptism, and basically he came to collect some money from the people, and to make a blessing for the house. And she's not hosting me in that moment, because I told her that I will not kiss the icon. You have to kiss the icon when the priest is coming. So I told her, well, I don't have serious talks with my grandmother, because she's very she's taking it personally, and she's very hurt about the fact that I don't believe. Well, I just said to her that I don't want to kiss the icon, and she was very disappointed, and she was telling me that she doesn't want the community to know, and she's afraid of her being isolated by the community, because, as I told you, the priest, after the mayor, is the most important person in a small community, in a village. And also the mayor is elected one time at 4 years, but the priest's name is like a king there in the community.
Csilla?
Yeah, I just wanted to add a short comment. When you said that in Poland politicians are the most religious, all of a sudden we see this also in Hungary, that the connection between the state and the church is very, very strong and very close. And we see in a way that the state actually using religion and using religious feelings for their own political purposes. And the latest example for this was when after 5 years, Viktor Orban has tried to give, at odds, trying to give a definition of what the illiberal democracy is. But now after his major plans of how the European Parliament is going to look like, and all the alliances that he's going to make with the extreme in Italy and Austria and all that fell through, he actually rebranded his illiberal democracy to a Christian democracy. And by this, it is a tool that he is using because it makes his form of government and his form of governance less attackable. Because if you talk about illiberal democracy, then you can attack him on the grounds of the rule of law, and you can criticize what is illiberal democracy. Yeah, illiberal is not the type of liberal democracy that we have, where we have the rule of law, that's separation of state, that's independence of the judiciary, that's media pluralism, that's all the freedoms that we have. But when he brands it into a Christian democracy, it makes it less attackable. How do you criticize somebody who's Christian? Although it's a very, very conservative definition of being Christian.
Well, this is very smart. I hope that our politicians will not do the same thing.
It's scarily smart.
Yeah.
I think it's time for our break. It will last 10 minutes, and after that you can ask questions. You can do it directly, or if you prefer, you can come to me in the break and I can ask them for you, whatever you prefer.
And
Okay.
also in the break we have coffee and buns and yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Vi har jo truffet noen av disse her før.
Ja.
Eller fra Polen. Og da snakket de om skolesystemet.
Hi. Nice to see you again. Very good. Very interesting. I'm organizing it, because we don't really officiate. I'm coming to have a speech, and then we have a handout. I might be having just like a reading, but I'm not sure if you need someone else. Because it's a very small ceremony. This time it's not with two children. Yeah. But the ceremony is just the same anyway. It's just that when you give out the flags, it's just two children instead of, we've had everything from 1 to 10. So we'll be, it's very good to it's quite a new building and everything. It's very nice to have that ceremony.
That's why I wanted to see how you guys do that.
Yeah.
Because we don't have any experience.
No, I think from the naming ceremonies that I've seen, this is a typical one. To put it that way. It all depends on what kind of, what kind of room you have, or what kind of location you have it in. But this is a typical one. information about the bus because it's really easy because the bus goes to the bus terminal and it literally stops 20 meters from where we have. Yeah, so and it goes every 15 minutes. So, you know. And I'm going after the ceremony. I'm going into Oslo because we have our board meeting that weekend, but I'm missing a bit to do the next ceremony. It's only going into Oslo after the ceremony. Good luck with the questions. I'll see you on Saturday.
biology. And they were approved by the education ministry.
Ah.
So, yeah, we made the protest and they retreated them.
Okay.
But they were already on the schools. And they were taught in churches and yeah, it's crazy.
Ok, good. Ja, da er pausen over, og vel så det. Da kan de som vil stille spørsmål til panelet. Jeg ser litt sånn dårlig med noen, fordi det er litt mye sånn blendende lys, men dere må vifte veldig høyt eller hoppe opp og ned eller noe, så klarer jeg vel. Og der er det en i grønn som har et spørsmål her foran. Vær så god.
Thank you very much for coming and for elaborating on the challenges you face in your countries. I would like to, you spoke a little bit about what EU does, or that it helps to be a member of EU, because we're not speaking about former Eastern European countries, we're actually speaking about EU member states. And I would like to know how the EU is helping you to reverse, if possible, the authoritarian style of the leaders, and also how Norway and EU can help you. What you need from EU and us? What can you get inside EU? Or do you have some reflections on that? Thank you.
Can I start? For us, being a member of EU was a big help for Romanians in general, and for humanists in special. It was like having an older brother that helped us, because there are a few directives that help a lot with freedom of speech mostly. And I should give you one recent example. Last year on August 10th, there was a big demonstration against government in Romania, and police force, gendarmerie, they use tear gas against us, and most of us were there in this protest, and the international media covered the subject, and most EU politicians took notice and took a stand against it. And now is a process to find the guilty person that they gave the order to use the tear gas on the population. But this is just one example, because we still face a lot of challenges when it comes to freedom of expression. And even if the situation in some aspects is better, there are a lot of other aspects where the politicians are still trying to push an authoritarian agenda, and they're trying to pass the laws without being questioned by the population. But I'm not sure if this is only happening in Bucharest because it's the capital, but there's this movement of people rebelling against the government and taking into question what they're doing, and the way they're trying to limit our liberties. So there are continuing challenges, but we are trying to push through it. And the EU for us is very helpful.
I will leave you to answer, and then I will add something also.
Well, definitely there are a lot of directives that are very helpful in imposing, in changing the laws. Yes, and also the European Court of Human Rights is doing a really good job in this regard. But I think when I said earlier that that it has changed our country a lot, that we joined the EU, I meant mainly the fact that we started traveling. Like the fact that we didn't have to apply for visa, that we could just, move between Schengen countries without any formalities. It resulted in people actually doing that, and then seeing that, okay, all of these people who speak other languages, who we only know from history that we had like 100 wars with them, well, actually they are normal people, yes? They have similar customs, they eat similar food. Yes, they speak a different language, but there are many words that are similar, so you could even communicate if you don't speak a foreign language. And of course, if you speak some, then that's even better. So I really think this was the most important thing, that because you cannot change the society by imposing rules. So even if the legislation system is perfect, you still need to work on the mentality of people. And this is the most challenging part. So I think that sometimes what the EU institutions are doing nowadays is counterproductive towards my country, because trying also to impose too much certain progressive values, they are imposing it from above. Yes, and people who don't feel this, that these are their values, they don't learn about these values, they don't learn what these values are and maybe why it would be worth adopting them, but they are just told that now they should start believing in something else. And this is never going to work. So, so this is the biggest problem, I think, that the lack of communication between the elites who understand why certain rules are supposed to be good, and the people who are so distant in their mindset and who nobody talks to and nobody explains to them why suddenly they should, for example, embrace same-sex marriages if they were told their whole life that this is sin. Okay, and that in the Bible it says that actually these people should be even, well, a lot of bad things should be done to them. So I think people need to go to them and explain it to them. Like, explain, look, this is, for example, these are two men who are in love. Did you know that these two men are in love? Look at them, they are normal people. They are just like you or me. And I've actually been part of this kind of meetings, like meant to show, again, people from especially smaller towns and villages that these monsters that they are created by the church and some politicians, these are not monsters, these are normal people. And this works if there is a real contact, if you really show. But if they are suddenly just told that they need to apply different values than the ones they used to apply their whole life, they will not accept it, and actually they will become angry. And especially that we still have this history of communism propaganda. So a lot of people who are at least a little bit not authoritarian are actually very sensitive about having something imposed on them. So this is another side of the coin. So we have those people who, sorry, I'm going to wrap up. So those people who are very authoritarian, and these are mostly the very young people who really have been taught at schools that they should respect authorities and follow certain values, and that's it. And then you have these people who don't like anything to be imposed on them. And we have a huge lack of education, of communication, that would be aiming to change the mindset of people instead of legislation. Before the mindset changes, no real change can be done.
Okay.
And what I wanted to add is that besides the appartenance of us in the European Union, yes, the first thing that helped us was the mobility. The fact that a lot of Romanians, like above 30 years old, went to work abroad. Some of them are returning now, are returning home, are coming from societies, from open societies, which are embracing LGBT rights. They engage with people from different minorities, with migrants, and some of them are coming back with their mentality change. Some of them not. Some of them are also isolating themselves in those communities, but that helped them. And also, European Union helped a lot with European funds. And I'm speaking now about education funds and Erasmus program, especially for the students. A lot of students are having the chance all over Europe to learn 1 semester or 1 year abroad. There are a lot of universities in Romania that are having connections with France, Belgium, Spain, and other countries. And those students are coming back to finish their education years in Romania. Of course, some of them, we have this problem. They are choosing to leave the country to come back because they liked very much what they see at Western universities. But the European funds are very helpful. The educational funds are very helpful. And also, Humanist Association started to implement this type of projects. And in next month, we're going to send the second group of participants in an Erasmus project abroad, because we also want to send people to see other cultures, other societies. It's a short-term project, just 1 week, but we want to do it more. And what Norway is doing and can do, actually it already does. For us being here, we are very thankful for Human Ethics Forbund for having us here and engaging with you and to have these discussions. And the project that we did together until now were very helpful, and we are optimistic that we can do more in the future together.
Yeah, I believe, I'm sorry. Sorry. I believe part of the question was also what can the EU do to stop the authoritarian tendencies? And there I must say, from what I have been following in the recent years, is that the EU has been quite weak in drawing the line of where the authoritarian tendencies can go and where it should stop. And I'm thinking about Hungary, of course. For a very, very long time, the reactions from the EU have been too weak and too toothless. And it only reinforced the courage of the Hungarian government to go further and further and further. And triggering Article 7, I believe, came actually a little bit too late. And was actually triggered against Poland first, and then against Hungary. So more could have been done. And there's also the issue of conditionality that's being talked about now with the EU funds and the structural funds that go to countries conditioned on the rule of law. Where it's very much supported by Germany, France, the Netherlands, I think, and 2 other countries. But it's not sure that it will happen, how much time it will take. And one other thing to consider with the European Union now after the elections, when the Commission is being formed, the latest news about the renaming of one of the committees, or Commission of Migration and Protection of European Way of Life. That's a little bit problematic from different points of view. So we're living in the history that is being made now. But yeah, I really don't know what to say right now about the EU.
I think we'll take some more questions.
Maybe just briefly, sorry, because I got really
a
bit emotional before, because this topic, but there is something I would really like EU to do, which is not the typical thing that the institutions do, but I would like to see a mandatory course for young people about the European history and the European identity. Because I see populism rising not only in the Eastern countries, and I think it's partly because we don't know who we are anymore. It's like, in a way, we are losing the national identity, which is good in a way, but we are not really gaining the European one. I don't see enough effort to create a definition of who a European is. And I think this would really help people to find their own place in the world, to feel more secure in a way, and then less aggressive towards the newcomers. So I don't know if this is possible at all, but now there is a museum of the history of EU in Brussels, so maybe there will be some other step in this direction taken in the future. I would like to see that.
Okay, I think there are many questions. I think we'll do this a little bit differently.
Okay.
If you ask a question, only one of you answers. Okay. And short. And then we see in the end if you have time to say something more that you feel that you didn't get to say. Okay, who was next? There on the 4th row.
Actually, it is a question to the whole panel. to all the countries. And the question is, can you cooperate with other life stance groups, religious minorities, Jews, Muslims, Hindus, Buddhists, the different Christian denominations? Because the Norwegian experience is that we have a lot in common. Not on the level of critique of religion, which is central to humanism and rationalism. Of course, that has to be maintained. But on the practical level, on the everyday political level, cooperation with religious minorities, other religions, is important, and it has given results. That's number one. And the second question is, are there other civil society organizations you will cooperate with? Anti-racist organizations, for example? Thank you.
I can answer first because it's a very short question. As the Norwegian Helsinki Committee, we're a human rights organization, so we cooperate, yes, absolutely, with most.
Yes, in Romania we can and we do cooperate with religious minorities on some project-based issues. And we also cooperate with other organizations because we have some common interest with the one that, I don't know, feminist organization on LGBT rights, of freedom of speech and media literacy. And so, yes, we do this.
Very similar in Poland, actually, with this whole issue about religion classes at schools. So there was also an issue of the minorities that they were also supposed to be offered classes of their religion at schools, but since they were less than 7, they couldn't get those. So we were fighting against this together. And yes, on other projects we cooperate with all kinds of organizations like secularism. A lot of organizations are working together. We work with feminist organizations, LGBT rights activists, with the Polish Skeptics Club. So we have a lot of partners, and for many projects we look for more associations to join our cause.
Okay. I think there was someone, there.
Thank you very much for having the conversation and for all the important work that you do. I would like to ask a question about U.S. civil society groups. Are there any, with the rising authoritarian tendencies that we see, are there any pieces of legislation that have been proposed that seek to restrict how civil society organizations operate, and so how?
In Romania, there were some proposals, but they were not accepted. They wanted to control the financing of NGOs. I think one of them passed. It's
still pending.
It's still pending, but I don't think it's one of the priorities. But there was a problem with financing. I know that some NGOs complain about the SMS financing because it's almost impossible now. They want to know you have to register to donate for an NGO. So basically, out of SMS, it's basically impossible. This was in the last 2 years because the civil society was pretty much against the government and the Social Democrat Party.
And there was this new register that they invented that every NGO had to apply to register in order for companies to be able to sponsor some project. Otherwise, the company would be able to sponsor, but the sponsorship was not deductible from their taxes. So nobody was interested in becoming a sponsor for an NGO if they couldn't deduct the amount of money spent on the project. So yes, there are efforts to silence the civil society, since the civil society is against the ruling party. But I guess Csilla has some more.
Yeah, the clearest example is from Hungary with the Stop Soros law that was passed last year, if you're familiar with it. It targets mostly organizations that are critical of the government, also especially organizations that work with migrants and asylum seekers. And the law is called Stop Soros because Soros is the philanthropist that established the Open Society Institute and also gives grants to many organizations, not just in Hungary, but in many other places in Europe as well. And all these organizations in Hungary, both organizations and the individuals working for these organizations are seen as Soros mercenaries. At one point, there was a list published in one magazine naming about 100 people in Hungary as the Soros mercenaries. So this law is designed to put organizations that give legal assistance to migrants and asylum seekers in a bad light. They risk prison and fines, and they also have to pay a 25% tax on the grants that they receive for the works that they do. So it's been attacked at the Constitutional Court. It was, well, in February or March where the Constitutional Court came with its decision that was very ambiguous. It basically maintained the law as it is and just had minor nuances that could be changed. But yeah, definitely, it's one of the worst laws.
Another question? Yes.
Yes, I want to know more about the humanist organizations and why is it two different humanist organizations? This might be a touchy question, of course,
no.
But I want to know why.
It's not a touchy question, but we are smiling because it's the question we get asked a lot when we meet some fellow humanists from other countries. This is why I did. So one of the reasons is that it's important to have more voices that ask for the same things because it creates a bigger pressure on the people in charge. But in the beginning, there was only one association, the human, just like in the yes, the Romanian Humanist Association. But in 2010, the founding members from ASUR, from the association I work for, decided to form a new one that focused more on scientific education, while Adrian Association focused more on international cooperation and programs for youth. So we have different directions of acting, but we all know each other and we have common projects that we also work on. So it's a tactical decision, basically.
I was thinking that the title for this debate was the freedom of expression and religion is declining in Europe. Why is that? And listening to you now, I feel that you don't feel that. You feel that the conditions in your countries are improving. Is that the right picture that I got? Or, and also could you just say a little about how you feel that
around you, because when we believe it was a win with the referendum that it did not pass, but it was like the bullet going right around you. So it was really close. It could have been easy. It could have been the other way around, because the people that were pushing for the referendum were from many churches and religious organizations that have come together, and they showed us that they have a strategy and they communicate, just like Adrian said, things that didn't happen before, but now they are happening. So you have to always be careful, because there are continuous challenges in this area. So
and one last thing is that during the campaign, the Social Democrat Party, the president of the party in that moment, said that the second day after the referendum, he will register in the parliament the civil partnership law. He promised that in order to, just to that was a discussion, PR thing for the European countries to see that, okay, in Romania this is going to happen, so that referendum is not so threatening to the civil society and to the LGBT rights. But after the referendum was not approved, he didn't say anything about it anymore, and he said that he was disappointed of the society or something like that, and he refused to register that law. So yeah, we can see that it was just a strategy, like a Machiavellic strategy, just to put to sleep the guards, the watchdogs, and just to solve its personal problems.
Csilla?
Concerning liberal values, I would just like to point at one example. We had, just last week, we organized a panel discussion on civil society at risk in Europe. We invited one representative from a bigger organization in Slovenia, because, well, we know the organization, and we thought that it was such a refreshing moment to listen to her talk about the situation in Slovenia, because it's a little bit unlike many of the countries in Eastern Europe. They have a government that is fairly friendly to civil society, and it has created an atmosphere where civil society can actually thrive, and where they, as an organization supporting other smaller organizations, can actually have a strategic approach to capacity building for the entire sector in Slovenia. This was one person in the panel, and then we had Vera Mora from Hungary. And I sometimes feel a little bit bad, because Hungary is always drawn out of the hat, as the worst example. But talking about liberal values in Hungary, I think it will take a very, very long time before things can change there.
And I have to ask a question about Poland now, because in Poland the elections are getting very close. And a lot of people feel and think that this is the big test, that if the government wins again, it will be a lot harder, and it will change things in a more serious way than it has until now. What do you think about this?
Well, yes, I'm actually afraid that if Law and Justice wins the second election with the numbers that would allow them to form the government on their own, they could become more serious in changing the country towards more totalitarian system. So this is my fear. For now, there have been, for example, attempts to restrict the freedom of expression. So just to answer briefly Anna's question, but actually they failed in most cases. They were not able to do what they wanted. So regarding the freedom of expression, I feel rather well in Poland. Yes, we do have this weird kind of blasphemy law, but I'm speaking a lot publicly. I have criticized religion many times, and I have never been not even challenged in this sense. So this is something quite marginal. Well, the reason why people vote for Law and Justice is not that all of the followers of this party are authoritarian, or they want to see a conservative Catholic country. There are some who do, but we estimate them as about 20% of the population. And there are many more people who will vote for Law and Justice for one of two reasons. One, that this party has offered social aid programs which were not there during the civic platform rules, and we had so much poverty in Poland and basically no social aid whatsoever. So their social programs really changed the reality in our country in a way that there are so many people happy with their lives, how they changed, economically speaking. So they got aid if they have children. They are getting some aid from the state for their children. Elderly people are getting aid now. The young people up to 26 years old, they don't have to pay the income taxes. So there are a lot of things introduced by this government that are making people really happy about their lives. So a lot of people will prefer to lose a little bit of freedom in order to gain sustainability, economical comfort, and this is the truth. The second thing is that this party has delivered their promises, which is not really true about the previous parties that governed. So again, now they're promising even more things, that we will give you money because of this, because of that, and I don't think they can deliver that anymore because they are going too far. But since they have done everything that they have promised, well, at least regarding the economical promises, people believe that this will happen, and I think this is really going to influence the results of the elections heavily. And on the other side, I'm not very proud of our opposition. So they are actually working hard to lose as many followers as possible. So this is another problem, that we don't really have any charismatic politicians from the other side who would speak in a way that people will trust them, will consider them reliable, and will decide that this is better than actually having a secured social aid that is guaranteed. So this is a real problem, and that's why I think that Law and Justice is going to win these elections. I hope that they will not get enough votes to rule on their own, and definitely I would hope that they will not be able to change the constitution on their own, because that could lead us to a very dangerous situation. But I think the problem doesn't lie in the politicians only. I really think we have populism all over Europe, and it has to do with all the fake news, all of this disinformation process. This is affecting the whole Europe, and since people are not really encouraged to think for themselves, they actually believe in things that are easy, that are tangible, that are there, and wow.
Yeah. Thank you. I think this might be a good place to end this talk, in the idea that Europe are more the same than we think, also in the bad ways, but also in the good ways. And thank you very much for coming here and participating today.
Thank you very much.
Want to thank you all for a very interesting evening, and Ingrid Brekke for leading the conversation. And I want to tell you that on the little table there we have different
material and this little flyer